Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday afternoon. I was going to record a video to talk about some news stories that kind of got glossed over the last few days. But then I decided, why not just make a live stream in the afternoon and see if anybody likes this time slot. So we'll see how many people show up. If people like this time slot, maybe I'll start doing more mid-afternoon stories and stuff. So first story of the day is about the 2020 election. And so it turns out that all of a sudden, out of the blue, we have people saying that, hey, there was some shenanigans maybe with the Chinese in the 2020 election. So let's see what hold on. Ooh, what are we doing? Ooh, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. I don't like this at all. There, that's better. This one. No, this one better. All right. So there's and there it is. Conspiracy theory no more. There was collusion and there was election interference, the likes of which humanity had never seen before. The Democrat Communist Party colluded with the Chinese Communist Party to overthrow the United States government during the November 3rd, 2020 election. Here is the FBI director, Kash Patel, says the FBI has located documents which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election, including allegations of interference by the CCP. I have immediately declassified the material and turned the documents over to Chairman Grassley for further review. Weren't there millions of excess names in the SSA database? Isn't that database used to verify identities for voter registration? FBI failed to fully investigate intelligence that China plotted to hijack the 2020 election with fake mail-in ballots to help Joe Biden, Kash Patel reveals. This lady says, do I recall correctly there were boxes of fake ballots made in China being stored in a warehouse in Georgia, caught on video? What about the building in Arizona that contained boxes of fake ballots made in China? Somebody burned it down, right? All this stuff, it's very suspect that all this is coming out right now. I mean, it's weird to me. It's like odd timing, but who knows? says, here's General Mike Flynn. So there was foreign interference by the CCP in the 2020 presidential election. Who was running the USIC at the time, and why didn't this get exposed back then? Can we get 4 years of our lives back? Here's Rasmussen report says, zero federal investigations of the 2020 election fraud were permitted, so this could not be reported. But here it comes. The FBI gives Congress intel on alleged Chinese plot to create fake mail-in ballots in 2020. Breaking, the FBI documents which revealed the CCP produced fake U.S. driver's license to skew the 2020 election with fake mail-in ballots for Joe Biden. FBI Director Kash Patel handed over documents to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley. Holy crap. And now we will go to the news story from Just the News. FBI gives Congress intel on alleged Chinese plot to create fake mail-in ballots in 2020. No. FBI Director Kash Patel on Monday evening turned over to Congress an intelligence report raising concerns that China had mass-produced fake U.S. driver's licenses to carry out a scheme to hijack the 2020 election with fake mail-in ballots for Democrat Joe Biden. So I remember seeing stories about them confiscating large numbers of driver's licenses coming from China. I assumed at the time that it was just like fake people, like people trying to get like fake IDs, like college kids and stuff. I didn't think it was anything to do with something like this. But who knows? I don't know. The newly declassified intelligence reports from August 2020 weren't corroborated or fully investigated, and instead were recalled from intelligence agencies at about the time then FBI Director Chris Wray testified there were no known plots of foreign interference ahead of the 2020 election in which Biden defeated Donald Trump, officials told Just the News. The new documents were turned over to the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa, but first raised concerns to the Bureau that the intelligence hadn't been fully vetted and instead was just dismissed, even though there was evidence of the fake licenses. Thanks to the oversight work and partnership of Chairman Grassley, the FBI continues to provide unprecedented transparencies at the People's Bureau. People's Bureau? I don't like the way that sounds. Patel told Just the News in a statement, to that end, we have located documents Chairman Grassley requested, which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 election. Specifically, these include allegations of plans from the CCP to manufacture fake driver's licenses and ship them to the United States for the purposes of facilitating fake, fraudulent mail-in ballots. Allegations which, while substantiated, were abruptly recalled and never disclosed to the public, Patel also said. In accordance with Chairman Grassley's request for documents, I have immediately declassified the material and turned the documents over to the chairman for further review. Officials who have seen the documents told Just the News the FBI had a relatively new confidential source who provided information in summer 2020 that the Chinese government was manufacturing and exporting fake U.S. driver's licenses as part of a plot to create voter identities for Chinese residents living in the United States so they could vote with fake mail-in ballots. Well, I mean, how many Chinese do we think are living in the U.S.? Or are they doing multiple ballots? I wonder if this is connected to any of the 2,000 Mules stuff. Has that stuff been proven out or anything? The intelligence sources claim the plot was specifically designed to benefit Biden. They also said the intelligence report was recalled within a few weeks and the allegations were never fully investigated on the grounds that the source needed to be re-interviewed. But in fact, another agency, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, had intercepted nearly 20,000 fake licenses around the time the intelligence came in, a possible corroboration of the report. I do remember something about the fake licenses. Pretty bad guy. This story isn't over yet. We got more links on this story. Here we go. So, come on. Here it says, Grassley letter reviewed FBI ordered records destroyed in September 2020. This does not conform to records preservation requirements. The thing the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago for? Here's the letter. It says, on May 5th, 2025, I sent, Dear Director Patel, on May 5th, 2025, I sent a letter requesting, among other things, the Federal Bureau of Investigations produce a September 25th, 2020 Intelligence Information Report, IIR, from the FBI's Albany field office. I write requesting additional records and information related to the IIR to better understand the decision-making process of your predecessor's FBI. The IIR notes that it was recalled in order to re-interview the source. Recipients should destroy all copies of the original report and remove the original report from all computer holdings. Given this, please provide all records relating to the re-interview and recall, including but not limited to all communications between and among agents and intelligence analysts. Specifically, provide all emails between and among intelligence analysts Jordan Siri, Supervisory Special Agent Charles Keller, and intelligence analysts in charge of the Washington Field Office, Nikki Flores. In addition, please describe all investigating steps the FBI has taken or will take to determine the veracity of the allegations in the IIR, as well as who recalled the IIR and the basis for the recall. If that basis extends beyond the request for the source to be re-interviewed. Lastly, explain the FBI under your predecessor required the original IIR to be destroyed, whether this practice is consistent with the FBI's past and current practice, and how this comports with federal record preservation requirements. So basically what it's saying is, why did the FBI say to destroy these evidence? It seems, isn't that a crime if we destroyed evidence of stuff? And they're supposed to preserve these records for multiple reasons. There's all types of laws saying they have to preserve these things, yet they said, no, pull it back, destroy it, don't let anyone know. Seems weird. Tea leaves. When Trump was declared the winner of the 2024 election, a race to inform on the 2020 plot began. Those highest up had meetings at Mar-a-Lago, including Zuckerberg. Trump makes this assertion below because he has evidence and informants under oath. Krebs, through CISA, falsely and baselessly denied the 2020 election was rigged and stolen. So, and this is, hi, MSNBC, will you retract this and issue Trump an apology? It says, opinion, Trump's lie about Chinese election interference is debunked. Its effects still linger. China didn't work to get Joe Biden elected, no matter what Trump said during the 2020 campaign. I mean, I just want the truth. That's all I want. I want to know what the truth is. That's all. And I think we deserve the truth. Election integrity. FBI Director Christopher Wray lied to Congress about a Chinese plot to rig the 2020 election, despite human sources confirming the CCP was sending fake IDs to Chinese nationals in the U.S. to obtain mail-in ballots, and seizures of tens of thousands of fake IDs by CBP. Wray refused to let his agency investigate further, and when questioned by Congress about the plot, he denied its existence. FBI Director Kash Patel has turned over the evidence of the cover-up to the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley. Will there ever be any accountability? Well, that is the question. Will there ever be any accountability? What's going to happen? Newly released evidence from the FBI proves former Director Wray lied to Congress and covered up a Chinese plot to rig the election for Biden. This confirms National Intelligence Officer Chris Porter's 2020 warning were accurate. And Barry Zuloff concluded in 2021 that Chinese plots to rig the election for Biden were covered up by the intel community due to policy differences with Trump. Porter's position was supported by then Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe, now current CIA Director. The evidence is now in the hands of the Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley. Will there be any justice? Now that is a question. Will there be any justice? New evidence proves former National Intelligence Officer Porter was right about the 2020 election interference. Trump was right. FBI asked spy agents to destroy intel on alleged Chinese plot to aid Joe Biden in 2020 election. Memo from Wisconsin. Well, look at all those voter names. Part 3. Another new finding, smurfing. Where Wisconsin State Supreme Court winner Susan Crawford donor records show 32 surnames with 20-plus alphabet letters used to start first names. See just one example here. So they're showing all these things, Alice and Amber, and so they just keep going, boop, 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 showing all these names. It's a smurfing effort, which we know there should be some investigations going on. Look at this. This is crazy. Statistically, bottom line is the chances of this pattern appearing across multiple surnames simultaneously, each with alphabetical diversity, is astronomically low unless artificially generated. That means these surnames weren't just reused, they were paired with widespread of first names that begin with nearly every letter of the alphabet. To demonstrate how unlikely this is, imagine you're walking through the woods in Wisconsin and someone tells you that exactly 32 chipmunks, each from different towns, all just happen to go to the bathroom at the exact same time. Each chipmunk has his or her name spelled with a different letter of the alphabet with their paw prints. This is what Crawford's donut data tells us. It's certainly didn't happen by chance. Just like 32 synchronized chipmunks didn't coordinate their bowel movements across a state. This isn't biology, it's fiction. And in Susan Crawford's donor database, it's fraud. She criminally laundered money into her campaign big time, committing massive election fraud. Right now, she's sitting state circuit court judge in Dane County. That's very interesting. I wonder if this is all interconnected. And here we go. The Gateway Pundit vindicated. CCP whistleblower, 1.5 million fake 2020 ballots printed in communist China. What's there reports about trucks delivering ballots? I mean, whatever happened with those reports? CCP aristocrat descendant Mr. Vines Alaverdes, a former political insider of the Chinese Communist Party, has corroborated that approximately 1.5 million fraudulent ballots remain unaccounted for after being exported from China to Canada and Mexico since July 2020. Additionally, don't forget Eugene Yu, CEO of U.S. election software firm Connect, who was arrested for storing data on servers in China. It's no coincidence that Connect was awarded a sole source $2.645 million contract to implement poll chief in LA County on the exact same day the county received $8.2 million in Zuckerberg bucks. Yeah, we're more interested in what squirrels do around here, not really chipmunks. We're interested in squirrel. In other words, Russia didn't interfere in the 2020 election to benefit Donald Trump, but the Chinese Communist Party overthrew the U.S. government in November 3rd, 2020 to benefit its Manchurian candidate, Joe Biden. It says this video was censored by all the bastards, whatever that. Let's see.
印刷不一样是吧？
对啊，因为你仔细看一下，它那个选票的那个印刷是不一样的。
那个没关系，我会看着那个图片来做这边。
然后到时候你们这边发物流的话怎么发？因为我这边订的话就是大量的订这样子。
大量订那个发物流的话，一般好像也要好几天哦，物流比较慢。
发国际可以吗？
我看一下，发国际好像是也是。
Now, I don't know if this is real or not. I don't know if this is what they're saying. I don't speak Mandarin or Cantonese or whatever this is. But this is all strange stuff, you know. I mean, I'm not making any assertions as what's true and what's not here. I'm just reporting on what's being reported in the news. So I don't know. You know, it says breaking: the FBI has documents which reveal the CCB produced fake U.S. driver's license to skew the 2020 election with fake mail-in ballots for Joe Biden. FBI Director Kash Patel has handed over the documents to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Holy crap! An August 2020 intel report on the matter reportedly was destroyed, and allegations were not further investigated by Wray's FBI. And Wray worked for AG Bill Barr's DOJ. The same Bill Barr who stopped this post-election investigation. In a letter today to FBI Director Kash Patel, Senator Grassley asked for more documents related to China's interference in the 2020 election. New info disclosed by Patel confirms the CCP mass-produced fake driver's license to obtain absentee ballots to vote for Joe Biden. An August 2022 intel report on the matter reportedly was destroyed, and allegations were not further investigated by Wray's FBI. So here's the letter. Chuck Grassley. I think we kind of read through most of this earlier. And here's Mike Benz with new transparency reveals by FBI Director Kash Patel and Dan Bongino show Chris Wray's FBI compiled intelligence on China's plot to create fake IDs for illegal mail-in ballots for Biden. Then CBP intercepted 20,000 fake IDs in Pritzker's Chicago. Wow. Then FBI ordered intelligence destroyed. Wow. Yep. Yep. U.S. Border Patrol intercepted 20,000 fake IDs. I remember seeing the story about the fake IDs. I don't know. Didn't know that it had past fatalities. The FBI has located documents which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election, including allegations of interference by CTP. He's ordered it all declassified. Here's Donald Trump Jr. Breaking news with John Solomon of Solomon Reports right now on Rumble. Breaking news about China's attempt to rig the 2020 election and the FBI's flagrant cover-up with receipts. Tune in at 6 p.m. to hear it, all on Rumble. Breaking, FBI asks spy agencies to destroy intel on alleged China plot to aid Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Bum, bum, bum. FBI asks spy agency to destroy intel on alleged China plot to aid Joe Biden in the 2020 election. What's going on here? There we go. A confidential human source told FBI counterintelligence in the summer of 2020 that China's communist government was shipping fake driver's licenses to the United States to manufacture tens of thousands of fraudulent mail-in votes for Joe Biden. According to a raw intelligence report distributed to federal agencies that was reviewed by Just the News. The report, one of two, sent Monday to FBI Director Kash Patel, to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, was sent to the U.S. intelligence agencies on August 24, 2020, as an uncorroborated advisory, then suddenly recalled with little explanation other than the Bureau wanted to re-interview the source. The recall notice specifically asked spy agencies to erase or delete the original intelligence memo. This report was recalled in order to re-interview the source. Recipients should destroy all copies of the original report and remove the original report from all computer holdings. Officials told Just the News the recall kept the FBI and other agencies from fully investigating the allegations that Beijing was trying to meddle in the U.S. elections to benefit Biden, though corroborating evidence came in from a fellow law enforcement agency. They said U.S. Customs and Border Patrol had captured 19,888 of the fake driver's licenses, mostly from Hong Kong and China, in late July 2020 on their way to battleground states in the Midwest. The subject line of the FBI intelligence bulletin succinctly stated the potential nature of the alleged plot: Chinese government production and export of fraudulent U.S. driver's licenses. Why is this all messed up? Create tens of thousands of fraudulent mail-in votes for the U.S. President candidate Joe Biden in late August 2020. The intelligence report was not deemed corroborated, making it clear this was raw intelligence and that the informant was a relatively new and has been corroborated for less than 1 year. It is also noted the information was indirect through a subsource. Warning, this is information report, not finally evaluated intelligence. It also flagged one aspect of the informant's allegations. The information was about fake driver's licenses was gleaned from TikTok accounts of Americans. Person's address information was not a valid field when creating a TikTok account, the report noted. It is unspecified how China could obtain U.S. addresses from the application. That said, the FBI bulletin provided significant detailed information for the agencies to investigate as leads to make sure the U.S. election wasn't being hijacked by a foreign power seeking to exploit a sudden explosion in mail-in voting during the COVID-19 pandemic that struck in early 2020. In late August 2020, the Chinese government had produced a large number of fraudulent U.S. driver's licenses and IDs that were secretly exported to the United States, the report reads. The fraudulent driver's license would allow tens of thousands of Chinese students and immigrants sympathetic to the Chinese Communist Party to vote for U.S. presidential candidate, USPER, Joe Biden, despite not being eligible to vote in the United States. China had collected private user data from millions of TikTok accounts to include names, ID, and address, which would allow Chinese governments to use real U.S. persons' information to create the fraudulent driver's license. The report continues. The fraudulent driver's license were to include true ID number and true addresses of U.S. citizens, making them difficult to detect. China planned to use the fraudulent driver's licenses to account for tens of thousands of mail-in votes. After Just the News reported on the existence of the intelligence bulletin Monday evening, Grassley on Tuesday implored Patel to investigate the circumstances of the memos more intensely to determine who ordered the recall and why. The document alleges serious national security concerns that need to be fully investigated by the FBI. The senator's office said in a statement, Grassley is requesting additional documentation from the FBI to verify the production and is urging the FBI to do its due diligence to investigate why the document was recalled, who recalled it, and inform the American people of its findings. Makes sense. Patel told Just the News on Monday evening that he is fully investigating the circumstances surrounding the intelligence report and its recall. Thanks to the oversight work and partnership of Chairman Grassley, the FBI continues to provide unprecedented transparency at the People's Bureau. To that end, we have located documents Chairman Grassley requested, which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 election. Specifically, these include allegations of plans from the CCP to manufacture fake driver's licenses and ship them to the United States for the purpose of facilitating fraudulent mail-in ballots, allegations which, while substantiated, were abruptly recalled and never disclosed. I mean, this just seems like the same thing repeating over and over again, different articles saying the same thing. Yeah. So that's the China stuff with the ballots. I mean, I would like to know the truth if there was any type of shenanigans. I mean, it makes sense that there would be some shenanigans with all the mail-in ballots. There was some kind of weird stuff. I mean, we saw the 2000 mule thing. We saw other reports, and it just seems like where did all those votes come from? It seems, we know reports of people getting 7-8 ballots mailed to their house and stuff. Any person who's ever lived there got a ballot type of stuff. So, it seems like there could have been some hanky-panky. But, all right. Now we're going to jump to another story. It's China-related. It's not so much about the election as it is about Biden corruption with China. This from Real America's Voice, it says, I am shocked, and it takes a lot to shock me. There's several levels of this that are concerning, almost beyond belief. First family was taking millions of dollars from China. Biden's CIA director, Bill Burns, took millions of dollars from China. Mike Benz details the entire foreign policy establishment of the Biden White House had millions of dollars being juiced from the Chinese government.
I'm shocked, and it takes a lot to shock me.
Yeah,
when this story first broke, I thought that there must be some details about it that are more speculative than you can rely on. But the more I read the piece that you published and saw what Cash submitted to Chuck Grassley, there are several levels of this that are concerning almost beyond belief. So obviously the first family itself was taking millions of dollars from China. The Biden first family through Hunter Biden and China CEFC Energy, China CEFC Energy was taking $5 to $10 million in consulting fees from Chinese energy firms as Hunter Biden.
Isn't that a crime to take money from China? I think they're like FARA violations or something. I mean, is that what it's called, FARA? Is it called something else? Am I confused? Am I confusing something?
Biden was flying on Air Force One to China with Vice President Biden in order to secure those deals. Biden's CIA director, Bill Burns, took millions of dollars from China when he was the head of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace for 7 years before becoming CIA director, taking CCP members and putting them on Carnegie's board, as well as forming a joint Carnegie-China center so that they could cooperate more closely. Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, was the managing director of the Penn Biden Center, which took millions of dollars from China. So all the way up and down the entire foreign policy establishment of the Biden administration, from the White House to the CIA to the State Department, you had millions of dollars being juiced by the Chinese government the entire time. And then the more you think about this story, the more shocking it gets when you think about the massive biggest election censorship event in human history, which was DHS CISA's censorship of the 2020 election, specifically to stop election misinformation, which was all run out of a group that Chris Krebs formed called the Countering Foreign Influence Task Force, which you would think would have.
So China helped Biden because Biden was on China's payroll? I mean, is that believable? I mean, I guess it's believable. I guess it's possible. I mean, we know they were taking tons of money. They had all these, shell corporations and different things where they would take money and transfer from different things. And there was all types of shady stuff with that Rosemont Seneca. So then would that interconnect, and where China would then say, we can bribe Biden, we can pay Biden off, we can own him, so we're going to want to make sure that we put him in the White House? Is that what happened? Is that what happened? No. Is that what happened?
Have been the exact task force at DHS set up to stop something like this and set up to be responsive to something like this, when in fact it did the exact opposite. They told us there was no foreign interference. Now, how does the FBI know this, and the CIA know this, and the DHS task force, who is responsible for stopping the domestic side of this operation, not be informed? How is it possible that this intelligence was circulated at the FBI and CIA levels, but not at the DHS level? And so that is an immediate question for Chris Krebs and Alex Stamos.
Well, we can actually answer the question.
Okay. All right. So we're going to keep an eye on this story. We'll see what else comes out of it. I don't know. Mike Benz usually doesn't sell wolf tickets or anything like that. He's usually pretty good about stuff. So if he's saying they have this information, I have to think he's seen it somewhere. So, so now we got another story I want to get to. This is very interesting, but I think it's very suspect. Okay, I'm gonna say this now. I think it's very suspect that they are releasing this information about the China's involvement in 2020 right now, almost like, and it's very sad that I'm suspect of our government this bad, to where it's always like, what are they up to? Why are they putting this shiny thing and saying, here, look at this? What else is going on that this is coming out now? I don't know. If it's true, all the stuff is true, then what are they going to do? Who's getting arrested? When are they going to get arrested? What's happening? I don't know. So here, we'll jump to this other story real quick here. So here we go. Lawfare. Obama judge Kathleen Williams found Florida's attorney general in contempt for not ordering police to stop arresting illegals and to stop working with ICE. So see the double negative thing they play in there? So because he didn't listen to this judge, ordered him to order police to stop cooperating with ICE. How does this judge think she has that authority? I don't know. Attorney General Altmaier told the judge, I'm not going to bow down and withhold my oath. I give an oath to the Constitution, and that's where my loyalty lies. Here's what Dodge AI says. Judge Williams' contempt ruling against AG Altmaier's judicial overreach masquerading as the rule of law. Florida statute aligns with federal enforcement priorities, targeting criminal violators, not undermining constitutional order. When bureaucrats weaponize the bench to block cooperation with ICE, they are sabotaging border security and enabling chaos. Altmaier's refusal to kneel to this lawfare sets the right precedent. States have both the right and duty to assist in enforcing immigration laws when D.C. fails. The 11th Circuit already noted the injunction's overbreadth, yet Williams doubled down, prioritizing activist dogma over operational reality. This isn't about contempt. It's about a judge punishing dissent from her own radical reinterpretation of federalism. Oh, what the hell? I had a story lined up, and it won't let New York Times won't let me. So we'll have to go with the Miami Herald. Judge finds Florida Attorney General contempt of court for flouting immigration order. Florida Attorney General Altmaier was held in contempt of court by a Miami federal judge on Tuesday, June 17, 2025, for violating her order to stop enforcing a law criminalizing undocumented immigrants who arrive in Florida. What? A Miami federal judge overseeing a major immigration case found Attorney General James Altmaier in contempt of court on Tuesday for violating her restraining order to stop enforcing a new state law that criminalizes undocumented immigrants when they arrive in Florida. Seems so. If Florida passed a law saying it's a crime to illegally enter Florida, how can a U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams, who strongly criticized Altmaier's conduct at a hearing last month, said the state's attorney general crossed the line when he informed police agencies there remains no judicial order that properly restrains you from making arrests under Florida's immigration statute. Litigants cannot change the plain meaning of words as it suits them, especially when conveying a court's clear and unambiguous order, Williams wrote in her contempt order, citing a passage from Lewis Carroll's classic Through the Looking Glass and what Alice found there. Oh my God. Really? She's quoting Alice in Wonderland? Really? Fidelity to the rule of law could have no other meaning. It must file reports on immigrant arrests to the judge, it says. As punishment, Williams ordered Altmaier to file bi-weekly reports detailing whether any arrests, detentions, or law enforcement actions pursuant to the statute have occurred, and if so, how many, when, and by which law enforcement agencies. And these judges just think they can control everything. They think they control the president of the United States. They think they can control the state of Florida. This is just nuts, man. The judge said the first report must be filed by July 1st. She added that if any defendants in the case challenging the state law learn of any arrest, the attorney general must notify the court of the details of the arrest immediately. She said that Altmaier can seek to modify or terminate her reporting. Oh. Altmaier could seek to modify or terminate her reporting requirements in 6 months. This is ridiculous. Altmaier is a Florida native who served as the chief of staff for Ron DeSantis before he appointed him as the state's 39th attorney general. He has not appeared in a series of hearings before Williams. In response to the judge's finding, Altmaier struck a defiant position, saying in a post on X, if being held in contempt is what it costs to defend the rule of law and stand firmly behind President Trump's agenda on illegal immigration, so be it. This guy sounds like he should be in the federal government. Like he should be, taking care of business. At first, Altmaier seemed to obey the judge's restraining order when he instructed the Florida Highway Patrol and other police agencies on April 18th that they had to refrain from enforcing the immigration statute. After Williams learned FHP officers had arrested more than a dozen people for illegally entering the state under the new misdemeanor law, including a U.S. citizen. They couldn't have arrested a U.S. citizen for entering illegally, but maybe they arrested the U.S. citizen for smuggling illegals. Do you ever think about that? Because that would be the crime if a citizen is bringing the illegals they're smuggling. Told cops they didn't have to abide by judge's order, but 5 days later, the attorney general did an about-face in his follow-up letter to the agencies, drawing the judge's wrath in a lawsuit brought by an immigration coalition and others challenging the constitution of the state law. I mean, I wonder why we can't go after these immigration organizations or these agencies or whatever you want, coalitions. They're clearly flouting federal law. They're clearly trying to subvert federal law, and everything they do, they're raising money to do it. They're helping people do it. It seems like it's an ongoing criminal conspiracy to violate federal law. That's what it seems like to me. It's what it sounds like. I don't know. The late May hearing set the stage for Williams' decision on Tuesday, which could have led to a civil contempt fine up to $1,000 and or jail time up to 6 months. There's no precedent for a state attorney general ignoring a federal judge's order, certainly not in the Southern District of Florida. Altmaier's defense lawyer, Jesse Panuccio, who formerly served in top positions in the state government and the Justice Department under a Republican administration, said the judge was only focused on a snippet of the Attorney General's April 23rd letter to police agencies telling them they did not have to abide by the judge's order, not the whole context of his message. At the hearing, Panuccio disputed the judge's assertion the Attorney General violated her restraining order. I don't think this letter is saying that. There is no evidence, he said, adding that the state police agencies have not made any additional arrests since April 18th, the date of her second restraining order. There is no contempt. But a former federal prosecutor in Miami who specializes in civil litigation questioned the rationale of the Attorney General's lawyer after listening to his arguments. Half the parties in any proceeding think the court got it wrong when the rule's against them. Germany Attorney David S. Mandel told Miami Herald, that's what the appellate court is there for. The losing party doesn't get to ignore the ruling in the meantime. That's Law 101. But they're not ignoring the law. That's the whole point, I think, that they're saying is that they didn't ignore anything. They're not enforcing it. No one's been arrested on her. On June 3rd, a federal court of appeals panel in Atlanta rejected the Attorney General's challenge to Williams' injunction blocking the enforcement of state law, criminalizing undocumented immigrants when they arrive in Florida. The three-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit kept in place her order temporarily preventing police and prosecutors from making arrests and pursuing charges under Florida's SB 4, signed by Governor Ron DeSantis in February. Altmaier's office generally opposed the judge's injunction on enforcement. He specifically argued that it was too broad because it applied not only to the named defendants, the Attorney General, and various state prosecutors, but also to unnamed defendants, including local, county, and state police agencies. In their ruling, the judges concluded that Altmaier may well be right that the district court's order is impermissibly broad, but that does not warrant what seems to have been at least a veiled threat not to obey it. During the hearing last month, Williams expressed umbrage not only with Altmaier's letter to the state police agencies, but also his remarks in a TV interview and on social media. She paraphrased a few of his public comments. I'm not going to rubber stamp her order. I'm not going to ask law enforcement to stand down. That's Mr. Altmaier saying what he meant, Williams told his attorneys. It's pretty clear what he's saying. I mean, a judge can order him not to do anything, but I don't think the judge can order him to say anything, right? Wouldn't that violate his First Amendment rights? I don't know. She doesn't have jurisdiction, he said. At the hearing, an attorney represented immigrant groups that sued the state and Miami federal court that Altmaier's letter was an attempt to evade and undermine the court's order. I mean, it just seems like we have nothing but people trying to fight the federal government and the government from trying to enforce immigration law. Like, why are they so hell-bent on not allowing anyone to be deported, on keeping them all here? Is it because of congressional seats, maybe? Is it because of the Electoral College and getting those votes? You know, getting the counting and the census and all that? Is that what it's all about? Is it really that blatantly, politically brazen? Clear contempt of court, American Civil Liberties Union lawyer Cody Wofsky told the AF, the American Civil Liberties Union, should change their name to the American Communist Union. Altmaier, whose views have been publicly backed by DeSantis, said the judge had no authority to order him to instruct FHP, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and other police agencies to refrain from arresting illegal immigrants upon arrival in the state because law enforcement officers are not named as defendants in the federal immigration case. A spokesman for Altmaier characterized Williams' position as lawfare by an Obama-appointed judge, suggesting that she had used her power as a legal weapon to thwart the Republican-led government's efforts to assist the Trump administration on immigration enforcement. President Barack Obama appointed Williams to the Miami federal bench in 2010. The U.S. Senate confirmed her the following year. The showdown between Williams and the state attorney general's office came nearly 1 month after the Florida Immigrant Coalition, Farm Workers Association of Florida, and others represented by the ACLU lawyers filed suit in early April. I mean, it seems like the American Civil Liberties Union is actually the anyone who's not American Civil Liberties Union, because that's all they seem to defend these days is people who aren't Americans. So they should take the Americans out of it. They really should. You know, Williams agreed on a preliminary basis, citing the supremacy clause in the Constitution, which says federal law takes precedent over state and local laws. But they're not trying to override the federal law. They're just saying they're going to work with the feds. It seems like it's a backwards circular reading in the law that doesn't make any sense. In late April, Williams said she was surprised and shocked to learn that Altmaier first told state police to obey her order and not to arrest undocumented immigrants but later said he cannot prevent them from making arrests. Okay, because what's he going to do? Williams issued her preliminary injunction on April 29th, prohibiting all state law enforcement officials and police agencies. How could she see? That's another thing too. She's entering injunctions against people that aren't party to the suits. That seems like this whole thing about the injunctions that they're doing. So now they're doing it to state officials too. So that's that story. So let's see. We have another story, which I don't know. You guys remember there was a story about the people that got indicted. There was a group of like 3 people. One of them was a USAID contractor that worked for USAID that got indicted for like a huge, like $550 million fraud scheme. Well, turns out that the Biden's USAID gave nearly a $1 billion contract to the DEI contractor who recently pleaded guilty to bribing USAID officials after it knew of the bribery. The money for root causes of migration was paid to a home-based business that employs the former USAID administrator. Here, let's see. USAID gave known con man $800 million contract to do Kamala's work on the root causes of migration. That's crazy. That's crazy. This is where the $800 million went to this house. It's a very expensive office building. USAID OIG knew of the $544 million bribery scandal involving Walter Barnes that DOJ wrapped up this month. On November 9, 2023, the feds barred Barnes and his company from contracting based on lack of business honesty and integrity. That same day, it chose him for an $800 million contract. The contract was to a joint venture between Barnes PM Consulting Group and Collaborate Up, a home-based business run by a part-time think tank employee that was used to exploit a set-aside for small business, even though large businesses would actually be doing the work. Collaborate Up says that USAID let it co-develop its procurement reform policies and then teamed up with a company that was criminally bribing USAID to get contracts. And when contracting officials said there was a problem, they asked a judge to force USAID to give them the money. Ooh. See, yet contractors appeared to feel entitled to the nearly $1 billion in government money, that they took the government to court demanding it. They asked the judge for a permanent injunction prohibiting USAID from rescinding its award. On June 10, 2024, Paul Young, a go-between who paid Watson to obscure the paper trail to Barnes, was indicted for his role in bringing Watson to influence the award of USAID contracts valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. The indictment refers to Vistent and Barnes as Company 3 and CC3 and says Young began making payments from CC3 to CC1 Watson. It described how, for example, in October 2022, CC3 sent a down payment for Watson's home to him through Young. 2 days later, on June 12, 2024, Judge Charles F. Leto issued a limited injunction punting the decision about the $800 million contract back to USAID to reevaluate. By that time, Vistent had been removed from the list of banned contractors, though its ban on its founder, Barnes, remained. On August 22, 2024, USAID awarded the indefinite quantity contract of up to $800 million for USAID Central American Regional Support Services to PMCG Collaborate Up JV LLC. It made an initial payment of $10,000 that day. Further demonstrating that the government knew at the time that Vistent PMCG had gotten its previous USAID contracts through bribery. 1 week later, prosecutors offered a plea deal to a co-conspirator of Barnes, Daryl F. Britt, that laid out the findings of a long-running investigation from USAID's Inspector General. The plea deal referred to Vistent as Company 2 and Barnes as CC2. There's just all types of corruption with USAID. Why don't we just get rid of it completely? Oh, so yeah, look at this. Ambassador Mark Green. So it's all these people that are associated with Collaborate Up. They're just taking all this money and they're robbing us. It's all our tax dollars. Yeah. Central American Regional Support Services. Ugh. Climate change. Yeah, they're doing all that stuff. On November 6, 2024, the day after the presidential election, GSA awarded the joint venture an indefinite delivery contract through 2029, whose cap was listed at $999,999,999,999. So $1 short of $1 trillion. On December 19th, shortly before the Biden administration left office, GSA gave it another indefinite contract with similar terms. The company rents administrative assistance to the government for $93.68 an hour. Collaborate Up did not return a request for comment. Wow. These are the contracts. It shows the amounts, the $999 billion. There's another one for $800 billion. Wow. 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 USAID gave no comment $800 million contract to do Kamala's work on root causes of migration. Joe Biden's USAID awarded an $800 million contract to a business operating out of a Virginia home, even after it formally ruled that its key manager lacked honesty or integrity. A reference to the fact that according to a May 12th guilty plea, he had secured USAID contracts through bribery for a decade. Wow. 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 Crazy. Crazy, crazy. Crazy, crazy. The contract was addressing issues affecting the root causes of irregular migration from Central America to the United States, the work that Biden assigned to Vice President Kamala Harris. I wonder if Kamala got any of that money. But which she never appeared to address. The Department of Justice announced Friday that Walter Barnes III, the founder of government contractor Vistant, previously known as PM Consulting Group or PMGC, CG, and Roderick Watson, a USAID contracting official, pleaded guilty to a bribery scheme in which Barnes and two others conspired to pay Watson $1 million in exchange for a $544 million in contracts. What has not been reported is that the Biden administration continued to steer contracts to Vistant PMCG even after it knew of the massive corruption. The migration contract, even larger than the $544 million in the indictment, and others that are still active. The $800 million contract went to a joint venture between Barnes Company and Collaborate Up, a tiny consultancy run out of a suburban home in Falls Church, Virginia, where its CEO, Richard Crespin, who runs the company, while also working at a think tank, lives. The Virginia home was the address listed on the $800 million contract. In announcing its $800 million contract, Collaborate Up said it would address the irregular migration from Central America to the United States by addressing climate change. Its website also touts its work advancing DEIA and combating misinformation. DEIA. What is DEIA? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and what's the A? Anal. This year, it added Mark A. Green, a former Republican congressman who served as Donald Trump's appointee to lead USAID during his first term, to payroll as a senior advisor. So it's just a grift train. Vistant's criminal scheme relied on joint ventures to exploit a DEI policy called 8A contracting, which lets the government award contracts with little or no competition when the recipient is a racial minority or a small business. It formed a joint venture with a larger company, which was bribing Watson and would actually do the work. So Watson could use Barnes' status as a black man to steer the contracts to him rather than being obligated to go through the open competitive process. Barnes' company ultimately received hundreds of millions of dollars, stripping his disadvantaged status, and Collaborate Up joint venture reversed this maneuver, relying on Collaborate Up's status as a small business to win a contract with limited competition while relying on Barnes and other larger firms to actually do the work. Wow. Collaborate Up says it co-developed USAID's procurement reform policies alongside former administrator Mark Green. Yeah, they reformed the policies so that they could steal more money. That's what it sounds like. And this guy Mark Green probably should be in prison. Somebody should be investigating him. That means the company that USAID charged of contracting reform got a massive contract for itself after partnering with someone who criminally corrupted the USAID contracting process, then put a former USAID official on his payroll. Wow. I mean, this story just gets crazier. The bribery by Barnes and his co-conspirators laid out in the charging papers, which included cash, fake payroll payments, and a country club wedding, a trip to Martha's Vineyard, a down payment on a house, and basketball tickets, took place between 2013 and 2020. By 2023, USAID Inspector General investigators knew of the corruption. On November 9th, 2023, the government barred Vistant and Barnes from contracting based on evidence of conduct indicating a lack of business honesty or integrity. That same day, it notified the Vistant Collaborate Up joint venture called PMCG Collaborate Up JV LLC that it had been chosen for the root causes of migration contract. The government is just too big. It's too big. It's too unwieldy. We need to just start, like, they need to go in like the guy did for Argentina with the meat cleaver, with the thing, and just afuera, just getting rid of everything with the chainsaw. Goodbye. It's got to go. A USAID contracting official believes the contract was legally questionable and told the contractors later that month that he was yanking it. He said that even though Collaborate Up owned 51% of the joint venture, according to the proposal, almost all the work would be done by Vistant or subcontractors. That meant Collaborate Up brought little to the table except being a middleman, while the contract's driving force was banned for lack of integrity, according to the civil court papers. Yet the contractors appeared to feel so entitled to nearly $1 billion in government money that they took the government to court demanding it. It asked the judge for a permanent injunction prohibiting USAID from rescinding its award. On June 10, 2024, Paul Young, a go-between who paid Watson to obscure the paper trail to Barnes, was indicted for his role in bringing Watson to influence. The award of the USAID contracts valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. The indictment refers to the Vistant and Barnes as Company 3 and CC3 and says Young began making payments to CC3 and CC1 Watson. It's a drives how, for example, sent a down payment to Watson for his home. 2 days later, on June 12th, Judge Charles F. Lecco issued a limited injunction punting the decision about the $800 million contract. And then it says about the indefinite quantity contract on June 24th, further demonstrating the government knew at the time that Vistant had gotten its previous USAID money through bribery. 1 week later, prosecutors offered a plea deal. Yep. Wow, you read all this. And this whole thing, the day after the president's election, GSA awarded them almost $1 trillion. December 19th, before Biden left office, GSA gave it another indefinite contract for $93 an hour. The $500 million bribery scheme is just one instance of fraud at USAID that is well known during the Biden administration, but not prosecuted until the Trump administration. Stephen Paul Edmund Sutton, a British citizen who worked for USAID contractor, pleaded guilty on May 19th to taking kickbacks related to an electric program in Pakistan. Sutton and a co-conspirator who worked for him were charged of giving out subcontracts to Pakistan vendors to perform work. In 2015, the pair created 2 companies that had the contractor pay them for forklift and crane services. Then these companies hired Pakistanis for half the amount. Prosecutors said the agency was defrauded of $100,000. Sutton was ordered to be handed over to immigration authorities instead of jail. The Daily Wire previously revealed that the USAID Inspector General told a federal court in November that another foreign aid contracting official, Matthew Zahawi, of the African Development Foundation, had steered contracts to a friend who secretly paid him personally. USAID had credible tips about Zahawi for years, but didn't take his phone until February 2024. The phone, it said, contained evidence that he was receiving wire transfers to his personal bank account from the owner of a contractor he had steered government funds to. But USAID did not ask a judge for a search warrant to conduct further investigation until November 4th, the day before the election. Zahawi has not been criminally charged as of now. Wow. My dog is making noise. So, all right, we have another story that I want to get into. It's an article I want to read. Has to do with wind power. So let's see. This is blown off course, the case against wind power. 1 second. Sorry about that. Blown off course, the case against wind power. President Trump's declaration on January 15, 2025, that no new wind turbines would be built under his administration and that existing ones should be dismantled was not rhetorical bluster. It was long overdue recognition of wind energy's central contradiction. Its green image masks an environmentally destructive, economically unsound, and technologically brittle reality. His administration's immediate actions, including the revocation of offshore wind leases and the freezes on onshore wind permits, have reoriented federal energy policy around a single principle. Energy must be reliable, economical, and genuinely sustainable. Wind energy fails on all counts. There's also been a lot of stuff like I think the wind turbines have created problems with the whales and stuff. The whales and stuff in the what? Oh, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. My dog is being really weird. So yeah, so it seems like there's been a lot of stuff with the wind turbines causing problems with whales and stuff. So maybe looking at that. So yeah. So Donald Trump says windmills are an economic disaster and environmental disaster. I don't even want one built during my administration. The thousands of dead and broken. I'm gonna kick. My dog is really getting aggravating. You hear? That's my dog trying to get into the room. I'm going to have to edit that part out. Most expensive energy, and they only work on massive government subsidies, which we will no longer pay. The myth of wind as a clean, renewable panacea has been driven by more ideology than evidence. Manufacturing a single wind turbine requires hundreds of tons of concrete and steel, mined, transported, and forged through carbon-intensive processes. Excuse me. The Danish Environmental Protection Agency notes that emissions from producing one offshore wind turbine often exceed 241 tons of CO2, the most of that emitted before the turbine ever spins. These turbines also contain rare earth metals like neodymium, whose extraction in Chinese mines is linked to radioactive wastewater, deforestation, and toxic tailings that leach into rivers. This is a green energy in name only. Moreover, the ecological toll extends beyond production. Wind farms kill an estimated 573,000 birds annually, including thousands of golden eagles and other raptors. According to a study published in the Wildlife Society Bulletin, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has issued eagle take permits to allow wind operators to kill protected birds in exchange for conservation offsets. What? A bureaucratic sleight of hand that would be condemned in any other industry. California condors, among the rarest birds on the continent, now fly near turbine blades that will, in the words of one federal official, inevitably strike them. The fact that the wind developers are now funding condor breeding programs to compensate for future deaths is not a solution. It's an admission of guilt. Offshore wind is no better. Surge in whale strandings along the Atlantic coast, 7 whales in 39 days in New Jersey alone, has sparked public outrage and concern among marine scientists. While definitive causation is complex, the noise from sonar mapping, pile driving, and increased vessel traffic associated with wind farm construction are the leading suspects. The North Atlantic right whale, already teetering on the brink of extinction, cannot endure this industrial intrusion into its migratory corridor. As President Trump succinctly put it, when windmills are driving the whales crazy. The foundational problem of wind energy, however, is not merely its ecological damage, but its unreliability. Wind is an intermittent resource, often unavailable when demands peak. Texas learned this lesson brutally in February 2021 when wind generation collapsed during a cold snap, contributing to grid failure and blackouts. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, has since warned that the growing share of wind and solar power is making the grid less stable, not more. Unlike gas and nuclear plants, wind turbines cannot be dispatched on demand. They require fossil fuel backups that must ramp up or down inefficiently to match fluctuations. A system so fragile that it introduces carbon emissions precisely where reductions are promised. Indeed, wind's inefficiency undermines its climate rationale. A comprehensive analysis in Denmark, long hailed as a wind power pioneer, found that despite wind generating about 25% of electricity, national carbon emissions declined by only 4%. In Colorado, integration of wind caused emissions to rise due to coal plants cycling inefficiently. This is not decarbonization, it's performance theater. Wind energy has also imposed immense costs on the landscapes and communities. A nuclear reactor can produce energy on 1,000 acres that a wind farm can on 200,000. The Breakthrough Institute estimates wind medium land use intensity at 12,000 hectares per terawatt hour compared to just 7 hectares for nuclear power. The result is a sprawling industrial footprint that fragments habitats. That's part of the problem, too, with the giant solar fields. Not only do they take up tons of land, but then the heat generated and stuff, I think they kill tons of birds and everything, too. In Ohio and Indiana, counties have passed 10-year moratoria on new wind projects. In California, desert ecosystems are bulldozed to make way for turbines. Residents speak of low-frequency noise that deserves sleep and shadow flicker that devalues home. Infrasound from large turbines can travel miles, disrupting both wildlife and human health. This is not NIMBYism, it's rational resistance. Nor can the grid integrate wind energy without incurring massive infrastructure costs. Because wind power fluctuates, grid operators must build expensive battery farms or keep backup fossil fuel plants online. NERC 2022 report makes clear batteries are not enough. We need backup fuel, and that means building out natural gas infrastructure alongside wind, negating both environmental and economical claims. Moreover, long-distance transmission lines are required to bring wind from remote plains to population centers. These lines face the same local opposition as turbines themselves, making both slow and expensive. So this just says that wind sucks. All right, I got another story we're going to jump to. Another story. Yeah. Well, should I finish the story on the wind? I don't know. It's just basically that windmills suck, and I don't know. So here's another story. This is a news story, story 4 or 5, whatever this is. I have now had the opportunity to read the ruling barring the Adams order to give the feds access to Rikers Island. New York Judge Mary Rosado found that Adams likely cut a quid pro quo deal in exchange for dropping the federal charges. Judge Turley says, the opinion is quite extraordinary and, in my opinion, flawed on a couple of important points. The opinion also engages in judicial virtue sealing in an unnecessary and extraneous commentary. The harm to the intangible assets, such as damage to reputation, loss of goodwill, and brand tarnishment, are routinely found sufficient to grant injunctive relief. New York City, which thrives on a global hub due to part of its reputation as being a welcoming home for immigrant communities from around the world, risks having this goodwill and invaluable reputation irreparably damaged as a result of the executive order born out of Mayor Adams' alleged conflict of interest. New York City, through legislations and decades of policy, has established a reputation as a sanctuary city. This reputation and the goodwill built from decades of policy decisions, which have provided New Yorkers with numerous intangible cultural and economic benefits. So they're saying, like, the people that work under the table for slave wages, yeah, that's what their intangible benefits. The harm to New York City's reputation as a sanctuary city. Wow. 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 So basically, it's a story about a judge in New York saying that the feds can't go into Rikers Island. Adam said they could. Crazy order. Crazy order. Now we'll jump to another crazy person. This is Chicago Mayor. This is Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who I don't know if you guys know. He's being investigated by the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division because he says he only hires black people because he said that black people are the most generous people. They help everyone, so that's why he only hires black people. So he's being investigated for that, for civil rights violations. And now he just said this.
Our way will bring to black residents in reclaiming ownership of our own communities. That is the spirit of Juneteenth, you all. It is about reflecting on our past. Other cultures are taught to never forget. We need to be reminded as blacks here in Chicago and America, remembering our past and working towards a more just future. Investing in black is not a criminal act.
It is for the city to say they're only going to invest in black businesses and black stuff. That is a crime, actually. You can't base things on race. There's laws. It's called the Civil Rights Act. You can't do that.
Sister Zakiya says she need a witness, so I'm going to say it again. Investing in black is not a criminal act. Our way will bring.
So he's a racist and a race hustler, and I think he sits at around 6% approval rating. He's been heckled. The only people that are cheering and clapping for him are people that are on his payroll that he bribes and gives stuff to. He's way more corrupt than Lori Lightfoot ever was. He still sits on the board of the Chicago Public Teachers Union. So when he negotiates as the mayor with the teachers union, he's negotiating with himself. So, yeah, he probably should be in prison. So, all right. Criminal act. So we have another story here. This is about the DHS. It says DHS needs more resources and manpower, specifically more federal law enforcement officers, more detention beds, and more transportation for removal. The one big, beautiful bill gets us all three. So what they're saying is they don't have the money to actually enforce the federal law, which is weird because I thought that they have all this money, do stuff. So it says the big, beautiful bill can help us deport criminals, keep the peace, and make America safe again. Says the Los Angeles riots have made it crystal clear. Congress's big, beautiful bill is crucial to President Donald Trump's law and order agenda of deporting illegal aliens, securing the border, and backing up law enforcement. Last week, violent agitators began attacking federal and local law enforcement officials in Los Angeles. Failed Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris falsely claimed the riots were overwhelmingly peaceful. Governor Gavin Newsom blamed the Trump administration because it dared to deport criminals. And that's the thing. You have all these Democratic officials who basically are saying, like, if you want the riots to stop, you have to stop enforcing federal law. Stop doing immigration raids. You have to. It's like, well, this is nuts. That would be basically letting criminals tell you what laws you're going to enforce. The legacy media provided aid and comfort to the rioters as usual. President Trump, by contrast, took action, sending the National Guard and Marines to maintain civility. Rioters were arrested. Immigration and custom enforcement agents continued to detain the worst of the worst illegal aliens, despite the danger to officer safety. Yet the riots showed us that we confront the challenge of removing millions of illegal aliens. We also need to stop criminals who resort to violence to disrupt our efforts. To do that, DHS needs more resources and manpower, specifically more federal law enforcement officers, more detention beds, and more transportation for removals. There was a program initiated under Eisenhower. It was called Operation Wet something. I don't want to. was a program to deport all the illegals that were in the country after World War II. And I believe they deported 500,000, like 500,000, in a matter of like 2 or 3 months. They were able to do this because Eisenhower used the military. And he was able to send them, and they collected all the illegals, and they shipped them out. I don't know if that's what needs to happen now, but they could look into it. First, the BBB will allow ICE to hire 10,000 new officers. It will also provide Custom and Border Protection funding for 5,000 more custom officers and 3,000 new Border Patrol agents. ICE currently has 20,000 law enforcement and support personnel in more than 400 offices. A larger force will provide ICE agents with the necessary protection so that they can continue to carry out removals. Why are more agents better? Simple. There's safety in numbers. These rioters are cowards who keep challenging us as long as they think they can get away with it. DHS needs to boost its manpower and resources to both remove illegal aliens and to keep things peaceful in the process. Additionally, we need more space for apprehended illegal aliens as they await deportation. The One Big Beautiful Bill funds detention capacity sufficient to maintain an average daily population of at least 100,000, double the current daily average. This will allow the U.S. government to safely detain more violent criminals until we can send them home. Of course, our mission to remove illegal aliens, not just detain them. The BBB helps us by providing $14.4 billion for removal transportation. $14 billion just to remove them? Maybe they should come up with a cheaper way. Buses? I mean, how much would buses cost? Or maybe trains? Maybe they could put them all in train cars and send them south on train cars. Would that be a bad look to use trains? Uh-oh. That's why DHS has seen an all-of-the-above approach. For example, CBH Home Act, which incentivizes illegal aliens to self-deport by offering them $1,000 and a one-way flight out of the country. No ICE agents are needed for these removals, which means no threat to their safety. It also saves taxpayers 70% per deportation. The One Big Beautiful Bill will cut down on the number of forced deportations by funding this program and encouraging voluntary deportation via the app. So basically, they're saying they need more money, and the Big Beautiful Bill will give more money. I want them to cut spending, though. I want spending cut. Like, they need to cut spending. They need to cut spending. They need to cut spending. Okay. So, now we're going to circle back now to more China talk with the next story. We have another Chinese story, which is Green Group with ties to the Chinese Communist Party, part of the network influencing U.S. policy. The story by John Solomon. Why does this let me close this? A national security watchdog group is asking members of Congress to take a closer look at an energy transition advocacy nonprofit that has ties to the Chinese Communist Party. According to State Armor, the watchdog group, nonprofits are coordinating with the U.S. climate groups to influence climate policy, advance the interests of the CCP, and undermine U.S. national security. A new report by State Armor argues that the CCP is co-opting the American Progressive Climate Change Lobby to advance a transition away from fossil fuels. The alternative technologies being pushed by this lobby, according to the report, create significant economic and geopolitical advantages by undermining U.S. energy dominance and leave it dependent on Chinese supply chains for energy production. It creates a dependence on our side and deprives us of a natural strength, which is our energy independence that comes from other resources. State Armor is a nonprofit organization dedicated to advocacy of state solutions for global security threats. Besides the dependency on China for energy supply chains, the U.S. may be vulnerable as a result of malicious actions. State Armor notes recent Reuters reports based on anonymous sources that rogue communication devices were installed in solar panels coming out of China. Ooh, I saw this. They found cellular receivers in the solar panel controls and stuff that would allow China to shut it off. It's crazy. Why would they be there? It's just there. So Beijing could shut things off over here, Lucci said. The report focuses on Energy Foundation China, EFC, and documents the group's ties to climate advocacy groups in the U.S. that are influencing climate policy. Energy China describes itself as a 501c3 nonprofit, which says its mission is to facilitate exchanges with and provide grants to policy research groups, industry associations, and academic institutions. Non-government organizations committed to sustainability, energy development, and energy transition. According to the report, Energy Foundation China has ties to the Chinese government and coordinates with CCP. It purportedly embedded itself in the American universities and supported an event in 2023 in which California Governor Gavin Newsom visited China. Lucci said the group functions as a central node that's part of a larger network. The key concept with China is what's called the United Front. This is their broad approach to political warfare. It's Leninist. It's actually directed out of Lenin where they get it. It's a communist approach to political warfare, and they stand up central nodes or central institutions like the EFC. And then around that, they try to just build any allies that they can align with communist vision or China's vision, and to attack or to delegitimize those who stand against the party's interest. The party's interest on energy in this case. The Energy Foundation did not respond for requests for comment from just the news about the report or its allegations. Energy Foundation China is a nonprofit headquartered in San Francisco. It was originally known as the Energy Foundation, but it spun off most of its U.S. energy-based operations in 2019 to a separate organization called the U.S. Energy Foundation. The State Armor Report documents numerous examples in which the State Energy Foundation provided financial support to U.S. climate group advocating for climate policies. In 2023, Energy Foundation China reported $84 million in revenues, according to the nonprofit website. It's funded by a number of U.S. anti-fossil fuel groups, including the China Climate Work Foundation, the William and Flora Hewitt Foundation, the Climate Imperative Foundation. Hewlett and MacArthur are key contributors, according to the report. The Collective Action Fund, which Fox News reported in 2022, was part of a dark money network supporting climate litigation against petroleum companies. In 2022, the Energy Foundation granted $350K to the Rocky Mountain Institute. Throughout the years, according, the foundation granted the RMI $900,000. Rocky Mountain Institute produced a study in 2023 claiming to find a link between gas stoves and asthma. Oh yeah, you want to get rid of gas stoves, which was often cited by policymakers and activists and the stupid Democrats. Restriction on that to seeking to restrict natural gas oven use. RMI researchers recently used data from past studies to estimate the rates of childhood asthma linked to exposure to gas stoves. The study's been criticized for failing to factor in its data. A more comprehensive global study published in 2013 by the International Study of Asthma and Allergies in Children. So it says the study was bunk. Energy Foundation also provided large grants to support climate policy research to American universities. Of course they are. They're in the universities. That's how they're getting into kids' minds, and they're stopping them. Energy Foundation, according to the report, is led by individuals with direct ties to the CCP. Zhou Zi previously served as Director General of the Chinese National Center for Climate Change Strategy, an agency within the Chinese government's National Development and Reform Commission. The Energy Foundation's Environmental Protection Director, Jin Liu, served as a leadership role at the Beijing Municipal Environmental Protection Bureau. David Vance Wagner, Vice President of the Strategic Partnership for Energy Foundation, was China's counselor in the Office of the Special Envoy for the Climate Change from 2014 to 2017. According to the report, Energy Foundation has coordinated extensively with the CCP. The NDRC enforces compliance with the Chinese regulations. Lucci said that Chinese government involvement in U.S. climate policy stems from concern over China's own energy supplies. They'll do anything just to secure perspective, just from a security perspective, remove the United States' ability to intercept their energy resources, their energy supplies. That would include getting the U.S. to be more dependent on Chinese green energy supply chains. Which they're doing. From solar panels to EV batteries and rare earth minerals, our supply chains are increasingly entangled with a foreign adversary that uses forced labor, ignores environmental safeguards, and openly aims to dominate the global energy future. Yep, we're going to have problems with China. We're going to have lots of problems with China. Okay. Maybe one, I don't know. I got a bunch more stories here, but I don't know if I'm going to get to them. We'll do 2 more stories here. The 65 Project, the legal lynch mob targeting Trump lawyers. Without a whisper, David Brock once again took a seat in that deep club chair. One upholstered in battered oxblood leather and steeped in quiet menace. He reached for his tailor-crafted inner pocket, drawing from it a fresh Davidoff 702 R. The oily Ecuadorian leaf caught flame with practiced ease, releasing the same familiar notes of dark chocolate and cafe crema. Nearby, a Becquerel tumbler appeared in a silent ritual of service, filled just so with Pappy Van Winkle. Pappy's good. As though it had always been there. This wasn't just habit, it was stagecraft, and the man in the chair was directing a performance with constitutional consequences. There was no need for preamble. Those in the room knew why they were there. Brock was about to reintroduce the legal profession to its own velvet-clad nightmare. His audience, a quiet circle of left-wing patrons and media barons, leaned in as he explained the next phase of his campaign, not against Donald Trump per se, but against anyone daring to offer him or his allies a legal defense. This wasn't about winning court cases. This was about ensuring those cases were never filed at all. Dum, dum, dum. The 65 Project, Brock explained, was not an electoral effort. It was not a messaging campaign. It was a war against the Sixth Amendment, that slender but essential clause guaranteeing every American the right to legal counsel. Its aim to deprive Republicans, particularly those challenging elections or government orthodoxy, of any capable legal defense. Run through Brock's network of nonprofits and housed under LawWorks, the 65 Project deployed seasoned political operatives to file bar complaints, ethic charges, and sanctions motions against Trump-affiliated attorneys. The power of the model lay in its asymmetry. A single complaint, even meritless, could cost an attorney tens of thousands of dollars and a year or more of disciplinary review. And even if dismissed, the stain was permanent. In 2025, this campaign is not slowed. In February, the 65 Project filed a high-profile complaint against Ed Martin, then interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. His offense? Alleged conflicts of interest tied to representing January 6 defendants before his federal appointment. The complaint cited violations of Rule 4 1.7 of professional conduct, a detail blasted across the headlines of friendly media outlets. As of June, there's no word on whether the complaint succeeded, but that isn't the point. The accusation is punishment. Incredibly, the 65 Project also targeted the sitting Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi. On June 5th, 2025, a coalition including the 65 Project, Democracy Defenders Fund, Lawyers Defending American Democracy, and the Lawyers for the Rule of Law filed a 23-page ethics complaint with the Florida Bar accusing Bondi of serious professional misconduct. The complaint alleged that Bondi threatened DOJ lawyers with discipline or termination for failing to pursue President Trump's political objectives. I can't even. It claimed her actions led to resignations and firings in various violations of DOJ norms. Yet, on June 6th, the Florida Bar summarily rejected the complaint, citing a policy against investigating sitting officers appointed under the U.S. Constitution. It was the third such complaint against Bondi and a third rejection. Critics like DOJ Chief of Staff Chad Mizell called the filings vexatious and politically motivated. That the 65 Project would go after a sitting attorney general at all illustrates the sheer audacity and absurdity of their campaign. Thus, they have announced that they will be filing more complaints against Bondi. I guess the beatings will continue until morale improves, that old saying. Even more outrageous, the same coalition named 2 additional Trump administrative officials in their June 5th complaint. Emil Bove, Principal Deputy Attorney General, and Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General. The complaint accused them of contributing to a culture of unethical conduct within the Department of Justice. By pressuring career lawyers to ignore professional responsibility and instead pursue political objectives at the behest of President Trump, the goal was clear: to not just intimidate one leader, but to undermine the credibility of the entire legal team working within the bounds of the law. If the DOJ works at the behest of the president, if they're not going to do what the president wants, then they're not going to be there. I mean, that's just the way it is. You know, remember Eric Holder said he was the president's wingman? Nobody cared then, did they? This complaint, like many others, underscores the project's enduring mission to ensure lawyers think twice before defending President Trump or his associates. Public defenders and private litigators alike have been swept into the net. Whether you were in court for Giuliani or simply filed an amicus brief on election integrity, the 65 Project likely has your name on a list. They're going to put your name on a list. This strategy, weaponizing legal ethics as a partisan bludgeon, would have made Boss Tweed grin from ear to ear. Backroom operators like Colonel George Britton McClellan Harvey would recognize it instantly. Harvey, managing editor of the Democratic Party's press empire at the turn of the 20th century, orchestrated conventions with smoke-filled rooms in Chicago's Blackstone Hotel, where policies were written not in law books but on cocktail napkins between Havana cigars. Brock, in many ways, is his spiritual heir, using legal bureaucracy the way Harvey used ink and influence. Biden-appointed judiciary has not resisted. In Michigan, Democratic activists succeeded in convincing a federal judge to sanction every lawyer who filed election-related litigation for Trump in 2020. Among them, Lynn Wood, Sidney Powell, and Stephanie Gentile. Each was ordered to pay legal fees to Democratic Party groups and attend re-education courses under the euphemism of continuing legal education. The court referred them for possible disbarment, fulfilling Brock's vision. Michael Teeter, managing director of the 65 Project, has filed complaints against more than 100 attorneys across 26 states. These targets include high-profile figures like Jenna Ellis, John Eastman, and Cleta Mitchell. And while many of these complaints were dismissed, by mid-2023, the damage to reputations and client relations still lingers. The project's tactics have drawn sharp rebuke. Congressman Lance Gooden, in April 2025, called the 65 Project a political hit squad and demanded a Justice Department investigation. Others on social media have accused the group of colluding with establishment Republicans to kneecap Trump's legal allies. Is there a bunch of rhinos doing it too? Such framing is dishonest. When Alan Dershowitz defended Al Gore in 2000, no one suggested he should be disbarred for challenging the election results. But now lawyers challenging questionable election conduct on behalf of Republicans face professional ruin. This is not accountability, it's ideological warfare. Well, you know, I wonder where this all goes. I do. Well, folks, I think I don't know. I'm a little under the weather. I'm not feeling well, and I've been screwing up reading things and reading the wrong words and saying things wrong. So I think I'm just going to end it here and call it a day. I do have a couple more stories I wanted to get to, but I just don't see them. I just don't see them. I just don't see me getting through it. So I want to thank everybody who came, and maybe I'll see you later tonight or something. I'll definitely see you Friday night. Doing live streams every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. I want to thank you, and thanks for coming. Thanks for being here, and thanks for letting Jim tell you the news.